Our world is facing a really complex and tough set of challenges. How do we meet the big environmental challenges of our time, like climate change? How do we tackle poverty, particularly entrenched poverty in some of the developing world? How do the so-called advanced countries deal with all the problems they've got when they have large debts and large budget deficits? We need, in order to tackle these problems, to tap into the talent of all our people, particularly young people.
I wanted to ask, other than voting, what in your experience are meaningful ways of engaging young people with government, and what would you say to other heads of states to encourage participation of young people in Parliament or government?
Well, I think there are a number of things. I think actually encouraging young people to join political parties and to think of political activity, because voting is just something we do, local elections, general elections. It doesn't require a huge amount of engagement, and I think you want to encourage people to engage more. So I think political parties, political activity. I think some of the things we do here, like the youth parliament, every country can run a scheme like that. I think that engages quite a lot of people. I think also trying to connect local government to schools. There's a scheme in my constituency, which I take part in every year, where the local council pitches up and explains to teams of children from different schools, young people from different schools, how much money they have, what the budget is, what would you like to spend the money on, and then sets them the project. And it's absolutely fascinating watching the young people work together and think, hold on, okay, if the council had an extra £1 million and you can get this or that or the other, what would we do? And it's then people start thinking, I get politics is actually about what do you spend the money on, what services do you get in response, who designs them. And I think things like that, quite tangible things, make a difference. So I would go for that, not just voting.
Okay, cool. My question, One Young World did a global survey. They found that 78% of 18 to 30-year-olds were disengaged with politics and felt there should be radical political change within their country. Also, they found that 64% of young Europeans don't believe in their leadership. They don't see that they're competent leadership. What I would like to ask you is, why do you think young people are so disengaged with politics, and what could we do to try and improve that?
I think the biggest reason is people feel that they vote, they take part, but then things don't change. So I think the biggest disengagement is just from the sense of, young people are very idealistic, and actually the idea people say they're not interested in politics. They're interested in political ideas, they're interested in political change, they just don't feel that voting changes enough. So I think it's actually trying to make sure that people can see how the political system works and to make sure it's more transparent. So if you publish all the data about what government money is spent, you publish all the data about what decisions are made, you're more open, more transparent, I think that can make a difference. But in the end, there's no substitute for people feeling that their vote makes a difference, that politicians give it to them straight, that even if they don't. I find that with a good example is the whole tuition fees debate. My party fought one election saying we'd get rid of tuition fees. I don't think anyone particularly believed that this was, so it didn't impact us positively with young people at all. Okay. And when we actually said, hang on, we're going to have to keep tuition fees, I found it was much easier to explain to people, well, of course, if you're going to have a good university education, someone's got to pay for it, and that should be, the students themselves should make a contribution. So I think a frankness in political discourse and a sense that you can see how the political system works and where money is spent, I think that makes the biggest difference.
Okay, thank you.
I've actually got two questions. My first one is, so who do you feel is responsible to reduce youth unemployment? It being such a big issue in today's time.
Yeah. Okay.
And my second question, I'll throw in that right now as well, is only 49% of young people in a global survey conducted by One Young World said that they believe that they will have a life as good as their parents. What do you see as challenges for our generation?
Well, taking the first question, who is responsible for youth unemployment and for tackling youth unemployment? Clearly, it's a government responsibility to take action. But I think we have to understand that you've got to attack every bit of youth unemployment. I mean, there are there are lots of different parts of youth unemployment. There are people who've left school without proper qualifications and so literally can't get a job even if there are good jobs on offer because they're not qualified. Now that means you've got to improve the education system. There's youth unemployment, I think, also sometimes caused in some countries by the fact that the welfare and benefit systems aren't working properly and incentivising work, so you've got to deal with that. But the biggest reason of all is normally the sort of frictional youth unemployment, where you've got economies that are facing difficulties, and so you need a growth of enterprise, private sector jobs and job creation. So there is no one answer. If you look at the countries with really low rates of youth unemployment, it's not one single thing that they do. If you look at say Germany or Holland, they've got education systems that turn out well qualified people. They actually have an education, training, apprenticeship mix that means that actually to be young and unemployed isn't really an option for most people because you're still in some sort of training program. They also have successful economies in creating jobs. So I think it's those things together. Youth unemployment isn't one problem. It's a set of different problems that you've got to unpick and deal with each and every one. The second question I think is absolutely right. I think young people are asking today, hold on a second. Previous generations were able to buy homes more cheaply, had very good guaranteed pensions, got free university education, and because particularly in the West you've got ageing populations, got population pyramids that look like that rather than like that, there's a real challenge. And I think we have to be frank with young people and say we want to make sure you have as good or better life than your parents, but it's going to take some tough decisions right now to make that happen. And we can't go on with the fiction that university education is free. It isn't. Someone has to pay for it. Actually, graduates themselves should be paying for it, and then it can be good. I think we have to deal with bloated welfare systems, very expensive pension systems, make sure we can afford them. So, if we don't do things like raise the age at which people retire, we're never going to be able to afford to pay the pensions of the future. So I think there's a series of tough decisions, some of which will be quite difficult for young people themselves. But actually, if we make those decisions, I think you can say to people, if you work hard at school, if you get a university place, yes, it'll cost you some money, but there will be jobs there will be good prospects out there, you can be a success in the world. It's a frank conversation to explain that the way of doing things in the past, where it looked like it was all free, but someone was paying for it later, that isn't an option anymore. No point, there's no good blaming a previous generation and saying, well, look, you had it easy, we want it easy. The money's gone. We have to change the system. We'll never meet these challenges and master these challenges unless we use the talent of all our people. And so we must use the talent, the brains, the brilliance, the creativity of our young people. And that's why I think this One Young World programme is such a good one, and why I pay tribute to all those who are taking part and all those who've organised it.